So we have discussed about that particularly what we can say the solid design principle till now, correct? So S stands for single responsibility, correct? O stands for open and close. Then we have you can say L is for LISCO, right? LISCO principle. I for interface segregation and D for dependency inversions. Correct. So that is we have already discussed last time, right? This same principles, a solid principle is getting used by the Spring framework. So first we need to understand what is the framework, right? So framework is basically nothing but you have created, you can say some classes packaged into a jars and you have given to somebody for ready-made use, correct? So like this, these people have created this framework and giving to all other people for the community so that people can use it, right? And it is an open source, so it is not any paid version. Now what is the need of framework? So as I told you, right, whenever you write any Java code, correct, in that Java code you need to have a particularly design in a classes to follow some certain design. So why you need to have a proper design in place? So design in place because you don't want it to have all these problems in future time, right? So when you are thinking about solid, so it should not be like this code is very highly coupled code, right? It has to be always in such a way, it is always open for an extension and closed for a modification. So in one of that example, I can tell you in my experience that one company, right? And it was not like a small company, it was one of the bank, largest bank. So they have written one of that, you can say, enterprise application code. And this code has been written by the people who has just started writing a code in Java. So they started a code writing in Java and it's around 10-15 years back. And till that time, I guess around 4-5 years till back here, this code was running in the same way. So they have written the code in JSPs. They have written a code into one single Java line, 10,000 line of code, 5,000 line of code, 7,000 line of code. So in one function, you cannot believe more than 500 lines, 600 lines of code. It's very difficult to debug, very difficult to understand it. So if any new functionality is coming, first you need to understand where this, if is opened and if it's closed, right? Where this particular functionality has been written, how to write. There is a, and if you will change one particular code, there is a high chances you will change that other functionality also. So you need a very heavy regression testing, correct? So for that, that's why we are saying that we need to follow a solid design principle. If you will write, if I will say Maruti system, right? Manufacturing plant, that application, if you'll write and if you'll write everything into one particular class, all functionality in 2-3 functions and everything. So you can understand if any new car is coming, if you wanted to upgrade any engine design, if you wanted to upgrade or add any such configuration and features into electronics related, or maybe safety features or any other thing. So you need to change so many places. That is actually we don't want, because it will create so many bugs, right? And it will impact to other functionality also, right? And it is very difficult for a new person also to understand and work on it. So we are saying that we need to have a proper framework, correct? And this framework will provide so many other places also, it will support to you. In the same way, there is also a concept of a Java design patterns. So Java design patterns are also you need to follow because they have very specific purpose. So design pattern, you can also create a pattern, but this pattern is especially to solve one particular problem. So there is a problem, and to solve that problem, we are giving a one particular pattern. So as I told you, right, there are some kind of a creational patterns, behavioral patterns, and structural patterns. So there are more than Java design pattern, Gang of Four. There is another classifications are there. So many such patterns are there, but specifically you need to understand why you need a creational patterns. Creational patterns are how you are creating objects, right? When you are running the application. So basic ground rule is you should not create an object whenever you want to use it. So the process has to be separated to creation of object and using that objects. Why? So simple example, let's say your database server is not able to take up a connection, more than 500 connection, it cannot take it up. First thing. So how you are creating a connections, right? So and how you are maintaining a connection pool. That's why this connection pool entire concept came up, right? So we can use the reusable connections and we can maintain the connections. So can we have so many classes which can maintain the connection pool, so many connection pools? Or is there any other class which can provide the connection, which will call as a connection factory? So if you will not have a proper code, what you do, every time you will try to connect to a database, you will open one connection. So if this connection is getting used, right, long time, right? So other process or other thread will also try to open it, correct? So at a certain time, how many connections you want that, right? That is one scenario. Like this, there are many such other scenarios where you need to have a, let's say, only single class. Then we use that singleton pattern. But apart from that, there is other patterns like factory and abstract factory. So you should have a factory, right? And on top of that, we will have a abstract factory, correct? So which will abstract factory will provide a factory, and factory, from factory you will get an object. That is a standard process we follow, correct? So earlier, before the Spring, people used to build the framework from their own, correct? So some certain classes, either they give it to at the account level, multiple projects can use it. And even though still many companies have their inbuilt frameworks, which is basically they give it to a multiple other people to use it. So in the same way, you can also create a framework. So Spring has created a framework, right, to solve so many different problems, correct? So Spring is the most popular application development framework, correct, for enterprise Java. Okay, that is base, correct? So Spring, now if you will see HatOS, right? Spring for Android, Spring Social. Social is generally used for all the social media sites integration like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. So ready-made API, you don't need to write your own APIs, ready-made API you have. Spring Web Services, Spring Session, Spring Webflow, Spring Mobile for mobile app development. Then we have that Spring Cloud, which is basically helping it to you for all these cloud features development, right? LDAP, right? Spring Data, Spring Batch. If you wanted to create any batches, Spring Messaging. So if you wanted to implement any messaging, so Spring provide that facilities, correct? Then AOP, right? Aspect oriented programming, that is a core feature of Spring, right? Spring MVC, you will have a much more better feasibility, and you can say better classes to write your you can say controllers or APIs, right? Either you are writing a REST APIs or you are writing a normal APIs. So Spring Web, right? So Spring MVC will come under the Spring Web. Like that, there are many such, you can say, facility Spring provides it. So if you wanted to connect to database, Spring provide that JDBC template, right? Apart from that, now it is Spring Boot provides the repositories. So you don't need to bother about this writing boilerplate codes. Everything is basically taken care by the Spring, correct? So this is a very powerful framework, and it is a very vast also, correct? So it is released in 2004 and 2005, correct, under the Apache license in June 2003, correct? So we'll make this our Java Enterprise Edition development easier, common task easier, right? And you can have a good practices basically, right? Easily testable and maintainable code. So your code has to be easily testable and maintainable, right? So as much as if you'll write layered wise code, right, and into a structured classes, it is always good. So that's why actually these designs is very much important, and that's why these architects are playing a better role when we are talking about, especially for a development, right? So key strategies are lightweight and minimally invasive development with POJOs. POJOs are nothing but, right, you will have all that properties which is holding the data, right? These are POJOs. Let's say customer.java, account.java. These are kind of a POJOs. Loose coupling through a DI, right? Dependency injections. So in that particularly through an interface orientation. So in solid, right, that last D stands for, correct? The same concept we will use it, right? So DI is a basically part of your IOC, inversion of control. Okay. And we will use that DI using that interface orientation, right? So that we can remove that coupling. So declarative programming through aspect and common conventions, there are some kind of a requirement, right, which you wanted to implement in every class. As an example, if you wanted to implement the transactions, logging, these are common. So every time you need to write that logging statement, log.debug, log.error, or something like that. So rather than doing this, you can use an AOP, and using the AOP, it will be applicable for all the classes wherever you wanted to use it. So it's a cross-cutting concerns, right? So common modules which you wanted to apply in everywhere, you can easily achieve through a declarative programming, correct? And another thing is that it is eliminating a boilerplate code with the aspect and templates. Okay. So this is the way basically you can understand it. So Spring Framework, right? So data access and integration for JDBC, ORM, ORM. So you will have a much better, you can say, integration with ORM tools, where you can say the especially is very much in demand is in Hibernate. There are many more other tools are also there. So Spring provides a better facility to integrate with other frameworks as well, right? So if you will, I don't know, nowadays people are not using Velocity and all other frameworks, right? If you are using an Hibernate, so it is better integration we can get it with the help of Spring. OXN, JMS messaging, transactions. Spring Web is used for all sort of your UI layer. So Spring also provide the integration with the structs framework, correct? Spring Web is basically used for Spring Controller, Spring MVC, portlets and servlets, right? So then AOP, aspect oriented programming, that is we have seen. Core container is where you will have that beans, core, context and expression language. And you will also have some certain classes which you can use for a test. So you need to first focus on the core, correct? So the core and bean provide the fundamental part of a Spring framework, including IOC and the DI. Okay. So the context means to access any object defined and configured, right? Is spatial expression language, right? It is basically if you wanted to expression language for querying and manipulating. So if you wanted to go in deep, that is okay. Otherwise, you can ignore it as of now. But core beans. So what is a bean? Any Java class which is basically instantiated or managed by the Spring. Generally, we use the term called as a bean. So in Java classes, we will call as a basically a beans. Correct. In Spring Boot, whenever we go to Spring Boot, we will basically use some much more words like a component. Okay. So then we will discuss about the components and other things like data integration. So JDBC provides a JDBC abstract layer. ORM provides that integration layer for popular ORM APIs, right? So like a JDO or Hibernate. Okay. Like this. So you can OXM is basically for mapping implementations, object to XML, XML to object, right? Like Castor, JXB. These are some APIs basically which is used for Java to XML, XML to Java. JMS message message service. So Spring provides a certain classes which you can implement this JMS messaging easily. Transaction, right? So if you wanted to implement the transaction in your code, so Spring provides this facility, right? With the help of AOP, right? So easily you can implement that transactions. Okay. So web. So web provides a basic web orientation integration features, correct? So servlet is basically, we generally don't use the servlet, but Spring provides, right, MVC framework, right? MVC stands for, that is one more type of pattern model view and controller. So view is nothing but what is you use for a UI representation. Model is nothing but your Pojo, and controller is nothing but which is basically receiving a request and generating a response for handling all the logic, correct? So this is the way basically a Spring MVC works, correct? So it also provide the integration and support for struts and the portlets, correct? So AOP and these details we have already discussed. So dependency injection and the aspect-oriented programming. So concept of application development, don't call us, we will call you, right? So the idea is dependency injection is the form of IOC. Simple example as we have just given last time, right? If you are using any, let's say, any computer, and you are using, there are some certain keyboards, right? So let's say you are using a plain keyboard. Later, if you are using any other fancy keyboards, so if you plug this keyboard directly, so let's say laptop is a class and keyboard is also a class. So you will directly give as an, you can say, right? As of now, if you will just see this dependency, you can take it as a association or maybe a composition, right? So you need to give a reference into a laptop class. But if you don't want it to, so it is highly tightly coupled. So high level classes, the idea is also saying dependency inversion from that solid design pattern. So high level classes should not be dependent on low level classes. So low level classes is nothing but your keyboard. So if you change the keyboard, you need to also change that your laptop class. So what we are saying, with the help of this dependency injection, so we will use the interfaces and then use the interface as a keyboard, and we can, all other different type of keyboards can implement it, right? And then we can easily replace that, correct? So that is a basically, you can see, so any point of time you can have the facility to change that dependencies. So when applying the DI, the objects are given their dependency at creational time by some external entity. So this, particularly with the help of DI, right? When you create an object of a laptop class at this moment, right? These dependencies are also given, means you also need to provide that what are the classes, right? Which is used, correct? Let's say keyboard is basically is another class which is dependent. So it will be given that dependency at the creational time. So when you create an object of a particularly a laptop, right? So that coordinates each object in the system. Okay. So it is saying that don't call around for your dependency. We will give them to you when you need it. Correct. So it is saying that whenever you need it, we can provide it. So idea is, let's say if you are giving this dependency injection with the help of any particularly through an interface, so you can change that interface implementation. So let's say two classes are implementing a same interface, so you can exchange these two classes at any point of time, right? Correct. So there are two ways to give a dependency injection. One thing is that you can pass these, you can say objects in the constructor as a parameter, or you can just give as a setter injection or as a particular class level variables. So class level variables, you will give it and you will create a setter getters like that. So you will create a setters. Correct. So in normal Pojo also, you know that, correct? When you create any properties, you will create a setter getters. Correct. And in Java, if you wanted to initialize, generally we initialize the parameters or variables through a constructor. So the core concept is remain same, but here we are using how we can define the relationship between these two classes with the help of DI. Correct. So this is the way you can just say. So DI is one form of the IOC. Correct. So, but also there is a factory pattern is also used it. So factory pattern main concern is creating a DI, right? Is creating. So when you are creating any objects, right? So this is the basically for factory, how you are creating an object and provide. So that is basically we use for factory pattern, right? And DI is main concern how this particular two classes are connected with each other. That's why it is basically we use the term for a DI. Correct. So Spring containers, right? Configuration metadata. Through that, we will create a container and it will produce fully configuration system which is ready for using. Correct. So Spring Core container is basically managing each and everything. So configuration metadata is what is exactly. So earlier, before I guess JDK, this Spring 4 earlier. So initially Spring provides that there is a XML configuration. So all these classes which you wanted to give as a properties and all these things you can put and configure into a XML. So when we load the XML, then what we do with the when we are loading this XML with the help of this class path or this application context. So there are a different application context. We will create that entire container and container will basically manage the life cycle of these classes, nothing but we call as the beans. Okay. So, and then it will manage all these beans, correct? And it is a fully configuration system ready for configured system ready for use. So all these bean objects will be available with you, correct? So it is not like that when you want to use any particular class, then you create an object. In the Spring word, there is a no such word kind of a, you will call as a new or you will instantiate it like this. You will ask to a container, can you give it to me that particularly object for this bean? Okay. So these are the some certain advantages, right? So these are some of this application context. So class path application context, file system application context, annotation config application context, which is working on the application basis, web application context, correct? So when we are talking about particularly web application, when you are working with, you can say, getting a request and generating a response, web layer, right? So in that scenario, you need to have a particularly a web application context. But if you are just working as a plain Java application without any deployment, you can use a class path XML application context. Okay. So this is a life cycle of a bean. So instantiate, populate the properties, right? Then this bean name aware. Then it will set the bean name. Then there is a bean factory aware, set the bean factory. Then it will check that application context aware, set the application context. Then pre-initialization, bean initialization. Basically, you can also initialize some of the properties. So they have provided some particularly ready-made methods also, or basically it is just for initialization purpose. Then initialization means after property set, you can, if you write any custom init method, you can just call it and initialize through it, right? And there is a post initialization, correct? So this is the way. Then these are some certain steps will be performed by the container. Okay. Then this bean will be ready to use, right? Once this container is shut down, right? There is a particularly disposable beans. So destroy method will be called. So if you don't provide any destroy method, right? So default destroy method, if you can also write your custom destroy method also. So if you wanted to clean up some code, destroy some objects, if you wanted to do, you can put it into a destroy. So there is a init method is also there, but generally init method is particularly what we are saying here. If you provide custom implementation, you can give it. Otherwise, you can just don't need to do it. If very much it is required for init method for any initialization parameters, let's say if you wanted to initialize some connections, initialize some data sets, if you wanted to some kind of initialization, you wanted to do it, correct? Which you don't want it to give it through a constructor, correct? Because if that constructor logic got failed, then this object will not be getting created. So what we are saying, some kind of a logic, if you wanted to write in some other data you want to initialize, you can use it init method. So we will have a particularly this lifecycle methods. Okay. Now, as I told you, so these dependencies, you can put it into an XML. Nowadays, nobody is using an XML in the Spring Boot, but earlier it has been started with the XML. Correct. So when you are giving any dependency, you can control this dependency in the XML, right? So you don't need to change the code. You will just change that. You can say dependency in XML, automatically it will change into a code. Okay. So implicit bean discovery and automatic wiring. So there is also concept of a wiring. So dependency injection, you have given it, right? How these classes are connected to each other. By wiring is also referring to for a same concept. So you have seen the wire or maybe kadi, right? You will see that if you will see chain, maybe people are jo bhi gold chains pehante hain, maybe or any other chains. You see there is a one particular kadi is basically is connected with other like this. This is a basically in the same way we will use the wiring. So one wheel is connected to other bean is connected to other bean, right? So rather than to give particularly as an injection, you can also specify as a automated wiring. So we can say auto wired. There is a concept of auto wiring. So this auto wiring can be done by the class name, by type, right? By name, by type, and two more types are there. So that is what we are just discussing about the automatically wiring beans, correct? So automatically wiring a beans, Spring attacks automatically wiring from two angles. Component scanning, Springs automatically discover the beans to be created in the application context, right? And Spring automatically satisfy bean the dependencies. So first we'll identify, discover the beans, right? Right, in the application context, and then after that it will automatically satisfy the dependencies. So it will automatically give the dependencies. Okay, so auto wiring, people will use it. So you can just see these many annotations also we will use is auto wire, name, component, configure, configuration, component scan and inject. Correct. So we will see how it works. So that's why I told you, if you can just particularly, this is a XML configuration. Okay. So this XML configuration, right? It is an XML and this is also an schema. Details, schema, locations, right? So this is given and it is, you need to take it up from whenever you are creating an XML. So what is happening here? You see this bean ID is nothing but a variable name, correct? So any class which you want to manage by the bean, you need to declare into an XML. I'm just giving this example. This is basically earlier initial days when how Spring starts, right? Earlier days when the Spring provided a support. So earlier days people were started working with this concept, right? Nowadays Spring Boot, you don't need to work on the XML. So directly you can use with the help of annotations. So everything is taken care by the Spring Boot framework. Now you don't need to bother about this XML configuration, because if you will mix up any such mistakes like this, right, this XML will not be getting loaded. Okay. So we don't need to do so all this kind of, and another thing is that there are many such now you see, correct? So sometimes it's very difficult to identify and debug the problems here. Okay. So Spring App XML. This is a simple Java project here. Okay. So you can come new. and create a Java project, right? Simple Java project. Okay. And give the details, your JDK, JRE, whatever we have already discussed. You can just configure your JDK version and that's it. Correct. Once you configure here, you can create a simple Java classes over there. Right. So any simple Java classes, I have created one account validation. So you need to create a bean.xml. You can give any name for this XML file. Correct. So any Java classes, whatever you write it, then you can just see bean management, right? Any other customer validation. So there is a no such, you can say these classes are already there here, correct? So bean.xml, you can put it so that we can read this bean.xml. So we will read it through a application context classes. Okay, because we need to load these beans. So how the process starts, once we will load the bean, whenever we load this XML, at this moment, this Spring framework will try to understand what are the basically objects need to create it. So bean ID, this one, this class is, right? So this class object, I need to create it and the ID will be account validation. Customer validation, this cust validation will be basically ID, and this is the, so object of this customer validation will be created, right? Then there is a payment processing or any other things you can just create it, correct? So this is the way n number of classes. So what is happening earlier, if you have 100, 200, 500 classes, all these 500 beans or classes, you need to give an entry into an XML. If you will not give, then Spring will not be able, and you will get that we are not able to find a class not found exception. Because here we are not creating any class object with the help of new keyword. Okay. So if you are using how many classes, all these classes has to be available here. You need to configure. Correct. Now, there is two such classes are there, customer account validation and customer validations. So when we are trying to implement DI, dependency injection, so what we are saying that in payment processing class, we can take it as a cust validation as a property. Validation product as another property. This is another class. And we are giving a reference. So this reference is nothing but this property name is cust validation. So it is referring to which bean. So the reference is the ID. Right? Let's say validation product. So you can say particularly a validation here like this. Okay. Now, this is the way you can say for a setter injection. But if you wanted to give any other injection through a constructor, so you can say constructor argument. You see, bean definition can specify 0 or more customer arguments, right? And this is alternative to auto-wire constructors. Okay. So what is happening here? You can say reference. So this reference is nothing but any other ID. So whatever reference you have given at this moment, this container will check that is this any other bean is available with this ID. So there is this bean ID associated with this particular class. So this class will be automatically injected through a constructor. So you can have n number of constructors argument. Fund transfer, another class we wanted to use it. So you can just use it like that. Correct. So we have defined there is a fund transfer. Correct. So this is the way basically you can inject it. So any beans, if you wanted to add, if you wanted to perform something like that, you can just do it. So I will just do a build here, clean build. I guess there is some error here. So any point of time, if you will see any errors, you can come up into an errors problems. So you see there is a three problems: invalid bean name, bean.xml, line number 9, right? So invalid bean name, bean ID, so at any point of time, if you wanted to, I will just Control A, Control C, delete. It will take some time. Correct. Now I have just pasted here. Correct. Like this. So sometimes you can ignore these errors like that. That is okay. Okay. Now, if you will just see, there are many such other project here. You can just ignore it. So in this particular, there is a one more error we are getting. There is a something is related to, I guess, project facet. No, it is not from in this project yet. So so there are like this. If you wanted to debug any such particular problem, there are many such projects are there in this workspace. So you can see that particular there is a specifically this is a description resource, which class it is having a problem, which project it is having a problem, which line it is having a problem. So you can just say what type of problem it is. Okay, so click on that and you can immediately get it. Correct. So this is the way you can try it. So we have actually there was a no such problem was there, but in XML sometimes it is just giving a this kind of an error, so you can ignore it. Correct. But it has to be, you need to just check that proper format of that XML. So every bean ID you need to start and add it. So if you wanted to create any such bean, you can say, correct. So class. And always you need to give that particularly path as from the package name, form.app dot processing dot process check. Correct. Okay. So this bean tag has to be start and bean tag has to be end, right? Like this. So is this process check? If we will start it, you will face some error because there is a no such class available as a process check here. Correct. So we will create this process check into form.app.processing. process check, correct? So when we are using a process check, you can add particularly method also here. We will see exactly what is the other error here. Any logic, you can just write it. Okay. Just check that some properties. So you need to add all these jars. So these jars are already, I told you, right? You need to download these jars, correct? So these jars are where these jars are. So you can add external jars. So I told you to download these jars, correct? These jars are where it is. These jars are available here. You see into an Spring. So Spring 5.2. This zip I have just extracted here, right? This is a zip file I have extracted here. This zip file, you can just check it. Come, lib, select all. As of now, for AOP related, context related, core, expression, JDBC, these JDBC messaging ORM we don't require, but as of now you can add it. Web, these are the jars basically you can just add it. As of now, don't differentiate it. You can just add it here. So these jars will be available here, right? Because some of the classes we will use for application context or many such other classes. So these classes will be available in these jars, right? So we will use Spring framework with the help of these jars. So Spring has created some classes. You can also see, right? Many such other, I will just show it to you, right? Details. Compiler. So this is the, you can just give it. So what is the problem here? Let's say there are some particularly message processing set of games and data. I will move this classes also into com.app.processing here. So I have already created, you can also just create, and that is also you can just do it, right? And I will remove this. So any particular class, right? Let's say is for payment processing. You have another class you have created, right? So these classes, if you wanted to just see, correct, we have given that as a particularly two properties. These are nothing but your setter injections, right? Then we have one particular or two particularly classes which we have given as a, what we can say, it is basically for a constructor injections. So you can pass these classes and the name has to be same which you have given into in your beam.xml. So in beam.xml, if you will see particularly this constructor argument as a account validation, it is a type of account validation. What is the type of this class? Is account validation. This cust validation is another class, right? So which we have taken as a property here. Account validations you have taken as a customer argument constructor argument reference. Correct. Property you have taken as a customer validation here. This is a basically a setter injections. So setter injections and then constructor injections. This is the way you can specify. So the name has to be same into a particular. So where you have given this injection in the payment processing class. So we are opening that payment processing class here. So in payment processing class, you will see all sort of, you can say, account validations, fund transfer, right? So two classes we have injected with the help of constructor injection. So the name of is being same and the type is basically account validation, the class name, right? This is also a particularly your name of your bean ID, correct? Or whatever you have given as a reference. And this is a class name, which is a basically you have the type. Okay, like this. So this is the way you can just give it. If you wanted to add any more class here, let's say private. So we have written process check. So we are adding one more functionality here. We are saying we need to add that process check also. Correct. So process check we have given into a bean ID as a process check. So you can come to a payment processing and you can just say correct. Now you have added here. Now we need to add, there is a basically a setter and getters. So you can just say right click here, source, right? You can say generate setter and getters. Correct. So get process check and set process check. You can say generate. Correct. Now, if you wanted to have this fund transfer and if you wanted to process, right? So what will happen here? Now you are not using any new keyword to get that particularly a process check method here. So what we are saying, Spring will manage to create an object for process check. Check processing, correct? So it will return as a true. So you can say so what is happening here? Check status. Okay. Here you can use it. This is just I'm giving this particular method you can call anywhere, any other time, you can just use it and you can do it. Yes, here. Just I'm checking here. There is some issue. Libraries. So let me just remove it. Let me add one more time this library. Correct. So this workspace default JRE is for JDK 1.0281. Right? You can use it. Okay. Right. If you wanted to have any alternate JREs, you can also install that alternate JREs. Right. You can come up here, say standard VM, and you can use that any other directory home if you wanted to give any other Java version. So this is the way you can change the Java version E. So whenever program will compile, so it will use this Java version, right, for compile and run. So we already have a 1.2.281 as a default JRE. So I'm not creating. Otherwise, you can just create it. It's not a problem at all. Right. It is saying it is already there. So we will just change the name. New JRE. Correct. So this is the way you can have a multiple Java versions also in place. Either it is a Java 11, Java 8, Java 12, 15, or whatever it is. Okay. So if I'm saying finish. Now, do you want it to use this one? And actually, it is a both are same, but just you can consider both are a different version. So you can change it. Let's say if I'm saying this one. Close. Okay. Now what you are saying, you need to say that, right? This is another JRE we wanted to use, this new JRE. You can say finish. What you will say, apply and close. Okay. So that is basically, I guess, the JRE related problem. That is also you need to understand why you are facing a problem. Basically, you also need to understand how to debug it. Correct. So in such a way, there are different problems. This is another related problem in this project. It is not in this same project. This another project is called as school management. Here it is saying Java compiler level version does not match with the installed Java project. Correct. So you can go in school management project and you can click. So where it is saying project facet version is not matching with the Java installed version. So you can check that. Just giving an example, what is the Java compiler version? So Java compiler version here, you are saying JDK 1.8. So project facet version is basically you also need to check it here. Here it is a 15. So you need to make it as a 1.8. Okay. Now what is happening here? Now you can say apply and close. Correct. This is the way you need to fix it up some of these problems. So you see the compile this problem is went away. Correct. Now it is saying one more problem in this project here. Let's open here. Then we will see what is the problem. So it is saying there are two more errors. So message processing class, it is not available into this particularly. So you need to import it. Right. Because we moved from this package to another package. So you can just say import. Correct. Now you can say yes. Now you see there is no such red mark in this project now. So this is the way you can debug it. So dependency injection. So what is happening here? You see, so how to load this bean. So basically everything start from this bean.xml because Spring will understand and create that bean objects from the bean.xml, right? So this bean.xml, it will load it, right? Number of beans you have provided. So these beans ID will be created. The objects will be created. We are not creating any object with the help of new keyword. So what we are saying that application context is equal to new class path application context. When we are using just as a pure Java application, not as a web application. So we will, with the help of this, we will get the context first. Okay. Then from the context, basically we will get the bean. So number of any bean, if you wanted to get it, you can just say context.get bean and you can pass the bean ID. So you will get an object. Simple. So there is a two ways you can use it. One is the particularly with the help of what I can say with the application context, and also you can use as a bean factory. So bean factory is also people are using, but bean factory my application context is providing a much more better facility as compared to bean factory. Correct. So you can ignore as of now bean factory because it's already outdated, right? And it is not providing that much facility. So every time now we have created a one more bean here, right? So what we are saying that bean, so simple bean we have created as a, so you can get directly that bean. So what is that bean name is? So check process check basically. So this string has to be same exactly the name of your bean XML, right? So this is a process check. And what is a what type of class it is? Process check. Correct. So you can come up here and you can say process check. Correct. Check obj is equal to new. Then you need to cast it also because it is a type of an object. So you need to cast it. Now you are again facing a problem because into a different, you can say package here. So you need to import it. So you need to understand how you can fix up the compilation problems also. Okay. Right. So you need to check it, what type of problem it is. Now you get that check process, check object here. Now you have, there is a one method, right? Check processing. So you can also say system.out.println. Correct. Check status. Dot. Check processing. So it is returning as a true, correct? So when this flow starts, some of the code we have already written here. So this line is very important, right? To create an application context. So we are loading that bean and creating application context. Once this application context is getting ready, and I have given all the life cycle, right? Bean name aware, bean factory aware, then application context name aware. This entire, with the help of this entire life cycle, then you will get that complete bean. So these beans are available at the context, and then you can get the bean, right? Context.get bean and pass that ID and you can just see, right? So now if I will run this class, you see there is a no such new keyword I have used. There is a payment processing, another class which we have used it. Many such other classes I have used it. But this payment processing class also has a some much more, you can say, other classes as a reference, right? Account validation, validate product. These are also having some method. So we have injected through these are the setter injections, right? We have also injected our process check also as a setter injection. So we have created a setter getters and giving as a property, and then we are just using it. So when we create, Spring creates the object of a payment processing, at this point, it will check that supply of these particular beans as well, right? Which it is required to create an object of this class. So this should be also available into bean.xml. Now you can just run it here. Java application. Right. Now, as we are running as a Java application, we are not deploying. Now it is saying there is a some problem. It is a message processing class not found. Correct. So you need to see why these exceptions is coming here. So it is saying this bean ID, bean name is message processing is defined, right? But this class not found exception. So when this class not found exception is coming here, right? Because it will check that particular class, right? So what is this class? Is message processing. So where this message processing has been defined here, right? So it will check, right? When it is creating an object, it will check for a message processing here. In that scenario, it will go up here and we need to check it into a bean.xml. So bean.xml Spring is saying, I am not able to find out this message processing class. So you can come and see message processing class. We have defined here message processing. So you see, actually message processing, we moved into a com.app.processing. Hence, it is not, Spring is not able to find out into default package. So we need to change com.app.processing, because all these class name should be available with the package name. Correct? Message processing. com.app.processing, message processing. Correct? Now again we have run it. So run as a Java application. Now again it is saying there is a null pointer exception in somewhere. Correct? So you see your message hello world, and this is the test. Correct? But still we are getting a null pointer exception into a transfer funds payment processing. So this line we are still getting a particularly a process check. So what we are saying, we have injected here, but actually this process payment, this object is null. So this Spring has created this object of a process check. Yes, it is created because we have defined as a bean, right? Because whatever bean we have defined here, it will create an object. So this is created, but it is not available into payment processing as a property. So that's why you are getting one more error here, null pointer. So you need to define one more property here. So what is this property name? This property name is basically whatever property name we have defined here. This property name is process check, right? Because we need to inject it. So that injection basically we are giving is through a particularly a property here. So this one. So it is referencing to which bean? This bean. So we are giving, this is the bean we are referencing. Now you know that, right? Why we are facing a class not found exception if you don't define it any class. So Spring is saying I'm not able to find out, hence I'm just giving an error. If you not inject properly, right, not giving a proper class name and all these things, then also you will say some error. Correct? Again we will run it. Run as a Java application. Correct? Now no bean name is available as a process check available. So you see, these are the some challenges when you are working with the XMLs. Okay. So no bean named as a process check is available. That is, it is saying here. So is this a bean name is available into a particularly go again, right? So you can see basically process check. Okay, is this, I guess we need to remove it. And this process check com.app.processing is a process check. Are you guys with me so far? Hello? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
We are able to hear you.
Correct. So again, we will see the process check here. So bean.xml, right? So these are the challenges when we are working with the XML. So you should know that. I will tell you that one more simple way also. Without any doing any other problems, you can directly set up and you can work it out. Now you see the data is coming here. So check status is true, right? This check status is coming from the first tab, right? You get it here. This is a check status and check processing is returning as a true in our process check. So what we have done, I'm just doing a summary here. We have created one class and adding one functionality for a process check. So we have injected this particular process check into a bean.xml, right? So bean.xml we have added here, correct? Then this, we are using this bean directly also, and we are using this bean inside the payment processing as well. Because we wanted to say we are also using a check payment apart from RTGS and apart from your NEFT. So check payment, we have added a one more class, correct? So in payment processing, whenever somebody is calling a fund transfer, right? Or this transfer fund method, inside that we are calling as a check processing. So earlier we have, so we, nor this particular object was null because we haven't declared properly, correct? And then we have injected process check here as a setter getter, as a setter injection. So first we have defined one property and then we have generated a setter getters, correct? And then we have just given into call up here. So any like this, I have added some much more methods here. So anytime if you wanted to do fund transfer, you need to do a particularly a account validation. So account validation, one class I have created here, simple method, and we are saying this account is validate account false. This account is not valid, correct? So this account validation class we have added. We come to a bean.xml, and what we are saying here, we just added that particularly account validation here like this. Then we have given as a particularly into an constructor argument, correct? So either you can give as a property or as a constructor. So inside payment processing, we have given as a account validation as a constructor argument, payment processing, correct? So we have created one constructor, in constructor this account validation, correct? So this is the way that Spring works. And now once you initialize this account validation here, so now you will get that account validation object is readily available and you can call any method. So account validation dot validate account, we have called it. Okay. Yeah, any functionality you wanted to use it. So this is the way you can just do and you can use it. Correct. So this is the way you can just create and you can implement. Now there is another way when we are trying to use as a Spring Boot, correct? Because nowadays nobody using, but you need to understand what are the challenges and problems people were facing earlier. That is a Spring Boot resolving it here. So you see, there are n number of jars you need to add it into a reference library. You can see into a reference library as external jars we have given into a class path, correct? So some of the things also I have explained it to you, how you can fix up a project compilation, build problems, configurations like that, correct? So you need to check that Java build path, JRE, Java version, or project facet. These are the some of the things you need to check it out, correct? Apart from that, now coming back to what I can say, especially for a Spring Boot. So Spring Boot solves many such other problems for us. So here what we are saying is Spring Initializer. Right. So here we will use Maven as a ready-made build tool. right? I will give some details about the Maven little later, but I'm just tell you that how Spring ready-made projects can be created into in such a way. You don't need to do any XML configuration. You don't need to add so many jars. You don't need to do any other things. So you can also do with me quickly, right? That particular project, if you have downloaded the jars, you can just given a class path and you can add it simple. So Spring Initializer, right? So Spring Initializer, once we will get it, you can create a project directly. So here you don't need to configure a project, JRE, all these things. It will be automatically configured and you will project has been created. So you can say Maven, right? So Maven is a build tool. Redden is also build tool. So we are using Java Maven, right? Spring Boot, and here you can say customer application, customer operations, correct? Now, customer operations, basically you can just, right? Then what you will say, we will package as a jar. So Java you can do, if you wanted to have a web applications, you can create as a var, or maybe you can create as a jar, whatever ways. You can say Java 8, right? Here you can add some dependency like Spring Web. So Spring Web, right? So this will use help it to you to create a RESTful APIs, right? Simple API Spring MVC, and it has also a Tomcat Apache server is also embedded. So you don't need to explicitly deploy, build, clean, all these overhead has a gone, right? Simple Spring Web. What you will say, generate. So customer operations has been, is already here. You can say one zip file is generated here. You can come to a particularly in my downloads. This is, you can just say cut D. I will say new apps. Here I will come paste, extract here. So Spring Boot, you can do that work with the Spring Boot with the STS also, right? As a ID, you can use it. You can download STS plugin in your existing Eclipse, or you can just do the way I am just doing it without any STS plugin also. So coming back to your Eclipse, what we are doing it here, file, new, sorry, import. So any other already project which you have already build it or you got it, you can import this project, existing Maven project. It is a Maven project. We are using Maven as a build tool, right? For build and other purpose, I will help it to you and give it to you the details, how Maven works and what are the another advantages of a Maven. So here you can just come up and you see D drive, apps, customer operation, select. So you will see there is a pom.xml, project object model. So in every Maven project, you will have one POM and everything is start from the POM. All the configurations, dependencies, versions, Java version, everything will you will see into a POM. So POM is very important, right? It is an XML. So you will say finish. So you will see importing a Maven project, it will just take some time because it will automatically download some kind of jars. So the jars you have downloaded and given here into a reference, you don't need to download it. It will automatically download from your Maven central repository and it will keep it to your M2 repository. So inside your user, so where is this M2 repository and it will keep it. So let's check it. Where is this M2 repository? So it will download these jars, and you can see users. Sheesh. So you will see here there is a .m2. So you don't need to create this .m2 and anything like this right now. It is automatically taken care by the Maven itself and the Spring. So these jars are getting downloaded here into a respective project here based on their classes, packages, and these details are there, correct? So you can see org, correct? You can see Spring. You see Spring framework. These many jars are already downloaded here. Spring Beans, Spring Core, Spring OOP. These jars we are not downloading in these, right? So these many versions we have downloaded actually automatically. And each folder you will see particularly a jars, right? And this is the jar executable jars and these details. So standardized way to manage and give this dependencies, that is basically Maven is helping to us. And you can also configure which version you want to use it. So you also need to specify it. It is not like that some people are using 5.3.4, some people are using 4, some people are using 3. It's not like that. So you can easily configure, and these are the standard ways and standard jars are there, correct? So it is downloading from the Maven Central repository. It is a public repository. So Maven is automatically connecting over there and it will download. So it will take some time when you are setting up the project first time, right? So you should have an internet connectivity also. Correct. So let's go and see, is this customer operation is there or not? So we see there is a customer, you see there is a M as a mark here. So this is a Maven project we have imported here. Many such other facilities also Maven provides. Maven provides so many plugins, so many facilities to run. You can also build and deploy, right? So basically what we are doing here, we also need to compile it into classes and we need to package into a jar. So these details also you can provide into a pom.xml, saying that these are, we need to packaging as a jar. So all these details you will see into an pom.xml. Okay. So in pom.xml, this is a Spring Boot version is 3.0.6. So we are also looking for an Spring as well. You see Spring Web. Now you don't need to add so many dependencies and everything. It is already gone off. You don't need to configure any XML, bin.xml, right? Here it is saying this Java version is a 17. Actually, we wanted to use it as a Java version as a 8. Correct. So, but you can change that Java version and everything from here as well. Okay. So you can see customer operations, see that particularly, again, verify that Spring, what we can say, the entire Java build path. So here it is also saying JRE version is a JDK system library, right? Cancel. Oh my God, it is using as a Java 15 here. Correct. So if you wanted to change, you can change it to a 1.8 or whatever it is, right? Or you can just do with 17 also or 15 also, whatever the ways you wanted to do it. Correct. So I'm not giving any changes or anything here. Let's say what is happening here. Correct. So now you will see Maven dependencies. These jars are automatically downloaded, which you are basically in earlier project we have seen downloaded explicitly and given. And these jars you see users ashish.m2 repository org Spring framework. So it is referencing from there. So it is automatically downloaded and put it there. This project structure will looks like ARG main or SRC main Java. Here you will see that your particularly COM example and customer operations. So we have seen, right, group ID and these details we have given. So customer operations, this is a main class where from where this particularly Spring boot operation will start it. So this is a Spring Boot main annotations. Now we are still started working with the annotations, right? So annotation will help it to you remove all these your details, right, from your configurations and all these things. Okay, so Spring Boot main, this also contains, indicates the class provided Spring Boot application @configuration. Okay, so when we are looking for auto configurations, or sorry, there is some much more other details related to bean auto wiring. Then we have seen that @component scan, @component. So rather than to configure into an XML, there was also one more level upgrade from the Spring side. We can also use and configure the beans with the help of annotations. Correct. So now Spring Boot is much more providing a facility where we can completely work on that annotations only. So this is a main class where in which class you will give this annotation, the flow will start from here and the bootstrapping process will start from here. So we don't do any such things here. If you wanted to build this project, it is automatically built, but you can say Maven, right click on the Maven, you can say run, and you can say Maven clean and Maven install. Maven clean for clean purpose, right? And Maven install is for build, right? So you need to understand there is these 2-3 commands. Earlier, when it was not coming up, you see this build successful. This particular thing you need to see every time you are doing Maven clean and Maven install. If build fails, you need to check it. Basically, why this build failed. Okay. So in this scenario, you can just see how we can install that. You can say build it. So it will see scanning the project. You also need to understand how to read these logs, right? You can see these logs. It is very important. You see these classes are available into a resources to target folder inside the classes. Now it is saying this build failure. So why this build failure, right? It is because of there is an invalid target release as a 70 because this Java version we have given. Right? So that's why this build got failed here. So we can make it as a JDK 1.8. Okay. Now you can also change that JDK version here. Properties. Actually, by mistake, we have just selected as a 17. Select as a only a Java compiler version as a JDK 1.8. So you have seen one more problem. Correct? Okay, Java build path. Please. You see, I will say remove. Right? I will say add libraries. System libraries. Workspace default JRE, new JRE, right? Correct. So you need to have a good understanding actually which Java version you are referring into a POM and your configuration of your project. Now see the Java compiler version. So we need to change it to 1.8. ठीक है. Save. Now again come and see what is your Java compiler version. Now you see Java compiler version is 8. Java project facet also. Here we are no such configuration, you can see, right? Java build path, right? You have added a new system JRE. Now, what we will say, found. Okay. Now, run as install. Now, still there are some problems. It is filling here. Finished. Okay. Build failure. Okay. I guess we have used that wrong Java version. That's why we are just facing some problem here. This wrong versions or this versions problem that is coming because of this incompatibilities of Java versions. So this Spring Boot version has also compatibility with the Java 8. Okay, so that's why we are facing a problem. So let's go and we will create again this project here. Correct. So here we will use a 2.7.1. Okay. And here we'll say account operation. This is Java 8 jar. What you can say, generate. So account operations again will come up here, copy and paste, downloads, cut, paste. So now we have seen there is a Java related problems. We have also seen that there is a compatibility related issues also, right? So we need to, these kind of a problems also you need to try and you need to understand how to solve it, right? Major minor version is basically these problems are coming when you are having a different versions of Java and you have a different versions of your other libraries. So Spring Boot has compiled their entire dependencies with different version altogether. Okay. So cannot access, it is saying that, right? Class file has a wrong version and should be like this only. Are you guys with me so far? Hello? Hello guys.
Yes, sir.
New. Now again we are importing. So you should be master to creating these projects, Spring Boot projects, create a multiple projects whenever you get a time, right? And as much as projects you will create it, you will be much more comfortable. Okay. Count operations. So you don't need to do any such things here, right? But you need to understand how Maven works, right? It downloads all these your dependencies, right, from Maven central repository, keep it into a .env repository. And from there, it will reference to your project basically, right? So when we are importing any project, it will also import and build it. Correct? Form.xml contains all the information here. We will also fix up this problem here, right? So I will tell you exactly. First, we need to just run it, our one of that application. Then you will see exactly how it works. Okay. So you see that account operations are also getting added here, right? In account operations, it is a Maven project. Any Maven project, you will see M, right? And it is also a same. You will have that resources where you have application.properties, right? SRC's main Java. Here you will have a one particular main Java class. So that main class here, Spring Boot annotation, it basically giving the details, right? Bootstrapping process will start from here. Okay. Now again, we will just run it. You see here, you will see JRE system library as a 1.8. Right. So you will not face any such problem now here. Clean. Because all the libraries and everything into a sync up here. So Spring Boot has a version compatibility with Java also. Okay. So that is you need to keep in mind, right? You cannot use a higher version of Spring Boot versions with any lower level version of JDK 1.8 or JDK 1.7 like that. So if first you need to just do a clean, then you can run as a clean Maven install. And you can run both the command also as a Maven clean install as well. So when you run that install, then the classes will be generated and you will see the jar will be packaged in like this into a target folder. So you need to be comfortable using that Spring Boot projects, creating a multiple projects and working with this, right? It also run having that some of that inbuilt test classes also getting generated here. You see, right? Now the process is started here, right? Like this. Correct? Building the jar. So you see, it will automatically run the test cases also. We will discuss about that, how the test cases is getting configured, how it is running, and all these things. So you can also do this. Now you see the build successful and jar has been created into a target folder. Account operation 0.0.1 snapshot.jar. So you can come to a navigator and see into a target folder in account operations. Here inside the target folder, right? See the classes, target and the jar here. Okay. So we can just go inside the project and you can see the jar here. So target. You see account operation 0. This jar is just now has been created once this build is successful. Correct? So it is so simple. Now, how you can start it? This entire bootstrapping process will start from here and it will recognize all the components, right? Auto configurations. There are sub components or these annotations are there. Enable auto configuration, component scan, right? and @ configuration. So there are all these annotations will help it to you to boot up the application and basically automatically you can say create that object, right, from the Spring side. So if you write, right, this run method is returning the application context. The way application right, you see application context, the same application context, which is basically the primary source to load, right? Basically, right? So application context is playing a very great role when we are trying or when we are using the Spring. So you can just say here, system dot out dot println. Correct. And you can say hi. This is my first tag. Correct. You can also just create a project here. Just you need to create the project and just need to import it. If you have created a simple Spring app and I can give it to you bin.xml, or maybe I can give the complete project, you can import and you can just use it. Now it is okay. This server is already in use because this Tomcat has also been started here. I guess. Okay. Oh, there is a, because this embedded Tomcat is there, so it will also run it here. So in my machine, I guess Jenkins is running. So I will stop it. So you just check it how many times you are running here, because if you will run a multiple times, you also need to understand it, right? Because first time, if that here we are not using a Tomcat and all other features here, we will use it later. But you need to understand it how these things works. Correct. You see, hi, this is my first step. This line is printed. So now this application is up here. So if you wanted to create a particularly one more file here, new class account service. So you don't need to work on completely for creating so many other stuff related to Spring injections. You just need to specify one annotation. Either it is a component, or it is a repository, or it is a particularly a service. When we define this annotation, right? So Spring identify this particular class I need to instantiate and I need to manage the life cycle. The status, right? Now we will do this account service as an injection into this class here. And here we will say as a auto wired. Now automatically it will be getting wired here. So what Spring will check that first, is this instance is created or not? Then it will automatically connect this service class into our this class here. Okay. I guess it is. No, you will not be able to use it here because it's a static main class. But this is the way you can just auto wire and you can use it. Okay. Now again we will run it. So the method of this account service class, we can use it into a Java application. I will tell you how to use when we create a controller and other things, but at least you need to understand that how we can auto wire here, right? So we got that object for this service, right? As of now, we are not getting any such error here. So we got an object for service, right? As of now, it is a main method we are running. That's why we are just facing a problem. Otherwise, we could have done it into some different ways as well. Okay. Through application context also we can use it, but this is the way you can auto wire and we will use it. So this is basically a complete session for Spring.